Thanks for tuning in and welcome to the Gnostic Connection. I'm your host and metaphysical detective, Damien Sebuyan. The Gnostic Connection is dedicated to the pursuit of exploring the esoteric behind the exoteric in an attempt to excavate the golden light of truth. I'll be aiming my metaphysical magnifying glass at world religions, philosophies, spiritual practices, scientific breakthroughs, and even popular culture. Gnosis is a Greek word for knowledge gained through direct experience of the transcendent. It's through the experience of the transcendent that the individual can most effectively know thyself, and, by extension, comprehend the full nature of reality. As a Gnostic detective, my role for each show is to investigate a specific topic of interest, uncover its inner wisdom, and share with you, the listener, my findings. Feel free to accept, reject, or modify my findings as you see fit. For today's episode, I will be making the Gnostic connection with relationships. Here is a poem I wrote that I feel fits the theme. It's called The Lake. It stands for the reflection of what we put in it. The horizon, with its linear blotches and honey gold sun, calls to us our one name, the name we had assumed as children would carry us like chariots into the field of eternal youth. The name we've since forgotten how to hear. The name that formed the heart within us that still pauses at dusk's great fade. The open mouth of wonder has grown older and uses words more to explore this water by, though there be swimming yet to do. This still that can reach into us like a pure memory of a touch is the same still that's always been. Nameless, formless, thoughtless, emotionless, wordless, and yes, still you. The eye that sees us without blinking, no one swims in. It does not dream. It has nothing to think about. We imagine so many great times pushing us towards wonderful ifs. What it would be like had I touched the leg of the strayed longing between us, in that place without a time, and that time without a place, as if we could have forgiven the words their utterance long enough, had burned them away from the fire in our hands as they forged new paths. As it is, the talk has lowered us into the depths of what might happen if we would have acted, or what it might look like in the universe where we did. The lake reaches the clouds without ever stretching. The night's diluvial sigh speaks to us in a way that if we notice this time, at long last, finally, can we pay attention all together now, this one last time, we'll live to pierce through the longing, to find the perfect response, the one that says from the breath-giving shadows, yes, this is it. There she is, looking out over the vastness, like she skipped a stone that was her wish, and it skipped all the way across the surface until it became the sun. And the windless waves of grief formed in the wake of the skipping stone have memorialized our time by sweeping through us, we participants, we actors, we audience, we watchers on the shore. We are left dry and unable to count the reasons we came this far without losing it completely. But here it is, a center that surrounds us, dining on its own tail, transmuting the tragic and comedic until it swallows its own alpha omega. And we're laughing at nothing to keep it alive, to keep us alive and evolving. We can discover again the person beside us, the same curved smile, dancing with tiny crow's feet, the familiar eyes looking skyward, as if waiting for the scheduled fall. Will there be a kiss at the end? Or will the end be swallowed by the kiss of the 10,000 things? The lake resumes between us and some brighter projection of night. All right, that was my poem, The Lake, that I first wrote in 1995 when I was in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. In the first episode of the Gnostic Connection, I explored all the roles that the force of desire plays within our reality, noting that the most profoundly important desire there is the desire for self-knowledge, or gnosis. I further submitted that this desire principle first played out on the stage of creation with Source itself. Thus, all of reality as we know it is a result of the one mind desiring to experience or know itself. Humanity has inherited that desire for self-gnosis, but due to a number of factors that arise from living in a persistently material world, what the Hindus call Maya, most individuals on this timeline are ignorant of who they are and why they decided to come here. The paradoxical truth is unavoidable. At the same time that the outside world and those within it can and will distract me from realizing that first desire for gnosis, I can never know myself within the limited vacuum of my own individualized bubble. Just as Source needs creation to experience itself, I require the feedback of the outside world, or others, to help figure out who I am, why I'm here, and what it is I'm most optimally cast in this play of life to do. In today's episode, I will explore the next stage in self-awareness, which is the idea that we can better know who we are through the experience of relationships. Shakespeare famously wrote for his character Jacques in As You Like It the following lines: "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages." It's clear that this poetic monologue acts as a metaphor for life, yet I find that it is incomplete. Sorry, Bill. I am not only an actor on the stage of life, Mr. William Shakespeare, I am also an audience member. In fact, in every interaction I participate in, I and everyone else involved in the interaction becomes both actor and audience member. In other words, we aren't merely actors, we are inter-actors. We aren't solo performers uttering monologues into the indifferent wind. We are beings in relationship with each other. Thich Nhat Hanh describes this dynamic in one word: interbeing. Neil Peart, the late drummer and lyricist for the band Rush, committed a similar modification to Shakespeare's words in his song Limelight. All the world's indeed a stage. We are merely players, performers, and portrayers, each another's audience outside the gilded cage. This interacting dynamic is crucial to psychological and spiritual growth for the individual and the collective. It's through interacting with the other that we are given the opportunity to expand and improve our performances, so to speak. We do this through assessing and responding to the feedback we receive from others. Consider this real-life anecdote as a practical example. When I was 7 years old, I said my R's as W's. When I said the word car, people heard the word cow instead. In my mind, I was saying it correctly. I was saying car. That's what I heard. It took feedback from others for me to learn that I had a minor speech impediment. As a result, I agreed to go to a tutor, and by the end of the summer, I had mitigated the issue and headed into 3rd grade on the white twack. Ha ha ha. To take Shakespeare and Neil Peart's metaphor even further, reality doesn't just involve the self and the other, the actor and the audience. Another crucial component here is the stage. The stage represents, among other things, the context upon which the self and the other play. Furthermore, the nature of the stage isn't static. It's a dynamic, ever-evolving, ever-shifting reality that is just as interactive as the other actors. On the surface, it would appear that the stage determines the parameters, the boundaries, and the context for the actors. But ultimately, if the actors were to fully realize their power, they'd discover the truth. They can transform the stage to be anything they want. From this wider, zoomed-out perspective, we are far more than mere actors. In fact, if all the world's a stage, then every man, woman, and non-binary individual is a cast and crew member, a director, a producer, stage manager, and audience member, with equal authority in determining the nature of the play we'd like to perform. To delve deeper into the interacting dynamic, let's take a step back and check out some etymology. When we check with one of my favorite websites, etymology.com, we discover that the word relationship derives from the Anglo-French relation, meaning report, connection, correspondence, act of telling or relating in words. Thus, we find that the very key to having a healthy, successful relationship can be found in the very etymology of the word, communication. It should be noted that whenever you see a word that ends in ship, it means that we're dealing with a quality, state, or condition of being. Censorship, for example, describes a state or condition of being censored, or of censoring the speech of others. To put it all together with today's word, a relationship, at its essence, is the condition of communicating using words. I find it interesting that the original definitions don't overtly include the idea of the other, but I think it's safe to say that when you are communicating in words, you are probably directing those words to another sentient being, most likely a human who speaks and reads the same languages as you. But hold on a minute. Let's not be so hasty. Consider this common situation. Earlier today, I thought I heard my wife say something to me while she was making coffee. "What was that, sweetie pie?" I asked, and she replied, "Oh, nothing. I was just talking to myself." I find it interesting that we all just accept that statement, "I was just talking to myself." We've all done it. We all talk to ourselves from time to time. Yet how often do we pause to consider the implications of that statement? Andrea, my wife, is allegedly one person. She is one singular individual being. So when she said, "I was just talking to myself," how is that possible? And what does it mean? The phrase implies that there are two beings involved, the self who is talking and the self that is hearing the one who is talking. But when I look at my wife, I don't see two people, I see one person. I'm going to delve further into this idea, but first, let's go back to the idea of relationship so we can find some common ground which is a synchronistic phrase for me to use, common ground, because the etymology of communication, the literal Latin root definition of communication means to make common. I like this definition because it implies that the essential purpose of communication is to find common ground with those we are communicating with. And the one we communicate most often with isn't the person or people outside of us. It is the person inside of us. For more on this phenomenon, I am going to quote the legendary hip-hop artist and mystic extraordinaire KRS-One. KRS-One is a contemporary of groups like Public Enemy and Wu-Tang Clan. This complete lecture, I think it's like a 30-minute lecture on YouTube, and there's also clips of it on YouTube. If you search KRS-One, that's KRS-1, and then Rockstar, it should come up for you. So these are the words of KRS-One as a little bit modified by me. Even though this is a quote, I would like for people to do this. If you're listening, do this little exercise. And unless you're driving, don't do the close your eyes part. Okay, I'm going to count to 3. And when I get to 3, I would like it for all the listeners to say the phrase rock star. However, here's the trick. Don't say it out loud. Say it in your head. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Great. Let's pretend we all did it. We all said rock star in our minds, but not using our mouths. The question to ask if you said rock star in your mind is, what voice is that? What voice just spoke? You just said rock star without moving your mouth at all. On top of saying rock star in your mind, you heard yourself saying rock star. How can you hear yourself say rock star and no vibration of sound has happened? This puts a different perspective on what sound actually is, and memory. But if you said rock star in your mind, or in your being is the truer statement, what was the voice that spoke? And you heard yourself speak it, but these ears didn't hear because your mouth didn't move. The ears didn't hear and the mouth didn't move, but you spoke and you heard yourself speaking. If you close your eyes, you can see this better. If you close your eyes, you can see your future. Even if you're only imagining it, you can still see it. But you can't see your future with your eyes. Your eyes don't see the past either. Yet, you can see your past and you can see your future. You can actually see your past. What is the sight that can see beyond time? You can hear without ears. You can see without eyes. So what happens when these ears, these eyes, this mouth drops off into the grave? These other senses are all that's left. Death is an illusion. Once you realize this, you live your life more courageously. No one wants to die before their time, so you protect yourself. But know that this body is the limitation of you. It is not your zenith. It is not your ultimate. The ultimate is that voice that just said rock star. That voice just said rock star without anything physical moving. That person is immortal. That person is not here with you. Let's go deeper. The body is in 3 dimensions: forward, back, left, right, up, down, plus time. That's our physical reality, 3 dimensions plus time. But what happened to in and out? Forward, back, left, right, up, and down. No in and out? What is in and out? Rockstar. Rockstar says, I exist without the body. So where is this other existence? It's not here. It's not in 3D space. Where you really are. The person that said rockstar is in a whole different dimension. Talk to yourself more. Affirm to yourself. Go within and say, I am the greatest ... ever. I have all my needs coming with speed. I am a being of love and light and knowledge. No weapon forged against me shall prosper. Whatever it is, Have your affirmation on your tongue. In your being. This is how the gods created this whole reality. Imagine the first humans. They came from inner space. They came out. Study the Anunnakis. They came out of inner space, not from outer space. Inner space. Rock star. Before there was a body, there was this voice traveling in this voice's dimension to get here to Earth. The inner voice created the outer extension of itself to be in this dimension. Once you realize that you're not only in this dimension, but you're also in another dimension, you now are free because whatever happens to you in this dimension is not your only reality. Once you realize that level of consciousness where you identify yourself as the spirit, not the flesh, you are the inner voice, not the outer voice. Once you become the inner voice, now your outer voice has power. Now when you speak, it's not just a shell speaking. There's a being speaking through the shell, and this is where you heal all sickness in your body. This is where you command reality to work with you, and it works according to your consciousness. Why? Because it's not a shell that's speaking. There's a real being in the shell that's speaking, and when the real being speaks, all nature and the universe responds. All right, back to the idea of relationship. So, KRS-One was talking about the inner self and how that inner self makes itself known through communication using words. What is the word that means communicating using words? Relationship. The first and most important relationship we have is the one we have with ourselves. In fact, as elucidated in the first Gnostic Connection show, the primary goal of our internal relationship is self-knowledge, or Gnosis. And how do we receive Gnosis again? Through a direct experience of the transcendent, or as KRS-One might put it, by identifying as the being within. That being within, some call the higher self. If you are fully identified as your higher self, then you have arrived at Gnosis, and all other relationships will reflect that Gnosis. But since most of us, including me, have not fully arrived to their expansive state of consciousness, we have work to do, and relationships to build. Let's look at some more relationship combinations. There are two basic relationship combinations, internal relationship and external relationships. If the relationship involves silent communication using our thoughts rather than the spoken word, then we can be assured that that relationship is internal. Does it then follow that if the communication involves the spoken word, then we're looking at an external relationship? Not necessarily. In fact, the example I gave earlier, Andrea was talking out loud to herself. She was having an internal relationship in that moment, but because she was speaking out loud and I had heard some of it, I assumed that she had been trying to communicate with me. Sometimes I think we speak to ourselves out loud because it seems to help, to hear the words with our ears. It reinforces the message we're trying to give ourselves. I do it regularly before I leave the house. Okay, I have the keys, my wallet, and my water bottle. Is there anything else I need to bring today? So, other than the times we talk with ourselves, whether out loud or silently in our heads, can we all agree that all other forms of communication involve external relationships? When we think of the word relationship, that's mostly what people mean. External relationships. Think of all the different words we have that indicate relationships. Friend, lover, husband, wife, enemy, mother, father, son, daughter, uncle, niece, nephew, coworker, employer, employee, boss, teammate, coach, party member, teacher, student, the list goes on. We may be different people to all those different people in our lives, but I suggest that the source of the voice that said rockstar is the source that remains the same in all the relationships we have throughout all the years and lifetimes we live. In metaphysics, especially in spiritual alchemy, the goal is to be the inner self. Not just internally, but eternally. It isn't about having a relationship with the higher self, it's about being the higher self. If you are true to yourself, you automatically become true to others, because, as we know from the first Hermetic principle, all is mind, which is just another way of saying all is self. And if all is self, then all seemingly other separate beings are no longer separate beings. They become unique extensions and expressions and reflections of that same internal, infinite self. Consider this anecdote. Once a seeker came to the Indian Hindu sage Ramana Maharishi, who lived from 1879 to 1950, and asked him, "How should we treat others?" Maharishi answered, "There are no others." It's tempting to judge Maharishi's response as a flippant non-answer, that it's contradictory and even outright wrong. On the surface, it is obviously wrong. And if you were to live your life as if there were no others and only you, then you'd become the living embodiment of solipsism, the belief that there is only you in the universe and all others are simple figments of your imagination. However, if you understand the stage, or context, of Ramana Maharishi's words, you'd know that he was coming from a non-dual perspective, and that that statement is actually the perfect answer to the question about how we should treat others. It's actually a simple rewording of the Golden Rule, only much more direct. The Golden Rule states that we should treat others the way we want to be treated. This one comes from Confucianism. Never impose on others what you would not choose for yourself. This one comes from Taoism. Regard your neighbor's gain as your gain and your neighbor's loss as your loss. Buddhism. For a state that is not pleasant or delightful to me must also be to him, and a state that is not pleasing or delightful to me, how could I inflict that upon another? This one comes from Zoroastrianism. That nature alone is good, which refrains from doing to another whatsoever is not good for itself. That one's a tricky one. This one comes from the Bible, Matthew 7:12. Whatever you wish that men would do to you, do so to them. This is the meaning of the law of Moses and the teaching of the prophets. This one comes from the Talmud. What is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. That is the whole Torah. All the rest of it is commentary. And this one is from Islam. Not one of you is believer until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. All right. So, to apply the phrase, there are no others, as a teaching, is the quintessential means in which to be in right relationship in all the ways you can be in relationship. If there are no others, that means there's no distinct self either. There's only the one self, the one awareness, and you are that awareness, and I am that awareness, and all beings are that one awareness. To fundamentally grok that idea is to live from the source of the voice that said rock star. It is to live from the higher self, the oversoul self. It is to be the Brahman and the Atman. It is, in short, to be God, and to perceive all the universe as an extension of that Godhood. If we/I truly lived from that perspective that there are no others, there would be no war, no violence, or violation of sovereignty like there is all over the place in the stage that we've created and act upon today. The major challenge most people, including me, have with the direct path offered by non-dualists like Ramana Maharishi, Rupert Spira, Mooji, and others is that it's very difficult for most of us to get there from here. Okay, there are no others. There is only the self, and I'm a unique expression of the one self. Then why is it that I am tailgating myself right now, stupid jerk self? And why am I bombing Gaza right now? And why am I starting all these wars and creating homelessness and clear-cutting the Amazon forest? And why can't I get my printer to work? And why do I get crippling migraines? And why? Unfortunately, the direct path doesn't answer those difficult questions. In the spiritual alchemy teachings of Hermetic Kabbalah, there is an alignment between the inner and the outer, and that alignment starts from the inside out rather than the outside in. This idea is brilliantly articulated by Rumi when he said, quote, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself." What I have noticed throughout my life is that my relationships with external others are reflections of my internal relationship with myself. This is a highly valuable formula to work with because it means you can monitor your psychological and spiritual evolution based on the types of relationships you have with others. For instance, it seemed like for many years there was always at least 2 or 3 people in my life with whom I could very easily trigger to anger and rage. What I finally had to come to grips with was that the anger and rage existed in me. And until I alchemized those emotional and mental patterns lodged deep in my psyche, they would express themselves in the various relationships of those around me. I had lots of unprocessed anger and rage built up from childhood traumas and from other factors. But because I intellectually perceived anger and rage as negative qualities to be avoided at all costs, they remained unprocessed. But because they existed as stuck energies in my emotional, mental, energetic, and physical bodies, I would generally only face anger and rage as it was acted out in others around me. My denial allowed me to pretend to be a nice, friendly, easygoing, laid-back dude. But my relationships were telling me something else entirely. This dynamic finally erupted into obviousness during a family gathering in 2020. My brother and I got into an argument, which got very heated and ended with Andrea and I leaving. At the time, I was convinced that I was completely in the right, and that my brother was unhinged and out of control. I couldn't understand why nobody else could see it, and why they didn't support me by calling him out and uninviting him to all future gatherings. Andrea gave me the space to unload all of my anger complaints about the situation. Then she kindly let me know that although I didn't threaten violence like my brother had, I had completely matched his volatile energy by egging him on and practically daring him to attack me by mocking his threats. She reported to me all the things that I had said, most of which I hadn't even remembered saying. This included me repeating his words back to him in an exaggeratingly mocking tone. How very mature and spiritual of me. This incident had stuck out to me as highly problematic because it had been 2 years since I had quit drinking. I had been meditating 3 times a day, getting my Reiki certification, going to sweat lodges and fasting and eating healthy. In short, I was doing all the things. Yet one fight with my brother, and it felt like all my mental, emotional, and spiritual training had completely collapsed. Today, I feel much differently about the situation. Gratitude, mostly, because, as Peter Crone, the mind architect, likes to say, life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you are not free. He's British. That conflict with my brother had revealed to me where I wasn't free. It showed me where I still have triggers to deactivate. It's been almost 5 years since the embarrassing revelation, and although I still have subtle triggers within me that need deactivating, how I respond when those active triggers become stimulated is much improved. I don't need Andrea's feedback any longer. I can now recognize on my own when I'm out of alignment, and then I make the necessary correction. There are many teachings about how to be in right alignment with yourself and others, and these teachings must be applied regularly until the jewel of our spirit is polished to its all-natural, organically perfected state. The teachings I'm going to share here comes from the Tarot Key number 6, the Lovers. To set this up, let's start with a reading from Paramahansa Yogananda. Consciousness and vibratory matter are the two natures of one undivided, unmanifested spirit. The difference between consciousness and matter is relative. The former is a deeper and the latter a grosser vibration of the one transcendental spirit. Spirit is the first cause of vibratory creation. The process of subjective, cognitive, and objectified consciousness do not exist in spirit. The knower, knowing, and the thing known are spiritually one. By creation, the hitherto unmanifested spirit manifests two natures, one consciousness and the other vibration. Consciousness is the manifestation of spirit's subjective nature. Vibration is the manifestation of spirit's objective nature. In one phrase, spirit appears as the universe of objectified vibratory matter, with its billions of units of life energy, atoms, molecules, gases, liquids, solids, etc. The other phase of spirit is its potential immanency in this objectified vibratory matter, as cosmic consciousness. Cosmic consciousness manifests as individualized human consciousness, with all its countless ramifications of thoughts, feelings, will, imagination, etc. Metaphysically speaking, the difference between matter and spirit consists in the rate of vibration. It is a difference of degree, not of kind. This point is illustrated by the fact that though all vibrations are qualitatively alike, vibrations from 16 to 60,000 are gross and are audible to the physical sense of hearing. Vibrations below 16 or over 60,000 cannot be registered by the tympanum, however you pronounce that word. The vibration of consciousness is so subtle and so powerful that it cannot be detected by any gross instrument. Only consciousness can comprehend consciousness. Only conscious human beings can comprehend consciousness. Only conscious human beings can detect the conscious vibrations of other human beings. Those who live in a certain room impress a vibratory force on that room that may be felt by other people. The subtlety of vibration of consciousness and the grossness of the vibration of matter are only superficially different. They differ in degree only. However, they are so distinctly and specifically differentiated by the vibratory force of the spirit that they appear different in kind as well as degree to the human consciousness. Consciousness is cognized as a finer force, existing within a coating of grosser vibratory force called matter. Or, it may be said that consciousness is the first vibration of spirit, and that matter is the result of the grosser vibration of consciousness. The ego cognizes consciousness directly. It cognizes matter, for example, the body, only indirectly, through consciousness, sensation, perception, and conception. That was Paramahansa Yogananda, author of Autobiography of a Yogi, one of my favorite books of all time. All right, so this is some commentary on the Lover's Key, and some of this information comes from my own studies, my own words, and Paul Foster Case. There are three figures shown in the Lover's Key: a naked man and woman and an angel. The angel is levitating upon a white cloud, its arms outstretched, its reddish wings opened and being bathed in the light of the golden sun above. The angel seems to be overlooking the scene below, where stands the two naked humans. The naked man on the right is facing the naked woman on the left. The naked woman is clearly looking towards the angel, upwards. Behind the woman stands a fruit-bearing tree. A snake is coiled around the trunk and seems to be eyeing the woman. Behind the man we see a different tree, one whose trunk and branches are black, and whose fruits appear as burning orbs of fire. 12 fire orbs altogether. Behind the three figures off in the horizon stands a lone mountain peak silhouetting a bright blue sky. This pictorial key is filled with evocative symbolism, and I could easily write an entire book about all its meanings. Instead, I will focus on the theme at hand, the teachings it has to offer on internal and external relationships. The man is the same man pictured in the first tarot key, the magician, and the woman is the same woman pictured in the second tarot key, the high priestess. The angel is Raphael, the angel of air, and he represents superconsciousness, and superconsciousness is the same as cosmic consciousness and Christ consciousness. It is the same as Buddha consciousness. In other words, the angel Raphael represents the kind of awareness that only enlightened beings achieve. The formula for a healthy relationship with the self is to use our conscious awareness in a nakedly honest fashion. That's what nakedness in the tarot means. It means openness, honesty, vulnerability. It means having nothing to hide. It means never lying to ourselves about what we are honestly thinking internally and perceiving externally. The man represents the masculine principle of the active communicator. He speaks, but he isn't speaking as the masculine principle alone. His way of communication is informed by the woman. And what is the woman doing? She is tuning into the angel, the heavens. In this way, she represents the feminine principle of receptivity to the divine, or listening. When we are nakedly connected to our intuition, we are connected to our higher self, and we can hear what our higher self has to say. So when we communicate from that place of connection, we naturally create a sympathetic and reciprocal space for a balanced flow of energy. Thus, the Lover's card teaches us two essential principles for having a healthy relationship: discernment and reciprocation. The Lovers teaches us the power described by the Hebrew letter assigned to it, the letter Zayin, which means sword. It refers to the human faculty, which the Hindus call Buddha. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, B-U-D-D-U. The determinative or discriminative faculty, the power to perceive differences. It is this power that is at the root of self-consciousness, as symbolized by the magician and the naked man. Since it is only with the mind of awareness that things are perceived as many apparently unrelated parts rather than as a single unity. Discrimination is valuable to us when we use it to perceive the difference between the real and the unreal, or the truth from the lie. As long as our conscious awareness is seduced only by appearances, we are perceiving unreality. But when we begin to awaken from the dream of the gross senses to the inner knowledge of our true natures, then we begin to understand reality. Our subconscious or feminine aspect we term intuition will help us determine right from wrong, the real from the unreal, the truth from the lies. In order to hear what our intuition is saying, we must learn to quiet the mind. The magician, or the masculine aspect of ourselves, must learn to shut up with all that mansplaining. One way to do this is through meditation with a purpose. Ask yourself, what does my inner knowing have to say about this situation? Then close your eyes, take some deep breaths, and wait for the answers to flow to you. The Lover's key is numbered 6, and accordingly represents the principle of reciprocation. Reciprocation is the act of giving and receiving mutually. Internally, reciprocation is the relationship existing between the self-conscious and subconscious phases of mental activity. For the self-conscious mind, the masculine, gives suggestions which subconsciousness, the feminine, receives, works out, and gives back to self-consciousness. When we have reciprocity within ourselves and between ourselves and others, when things are harmonious, we now have the ultimate prize: love. On the other hand, An inharmonious relationship is akin to hate, which is the inversion of love. Both love and hate are human emotions, but I believe, like many metaphysicians, that love and hate are spiritual emotions. We learn from the Bible that God is love. Hence, we feel that we approach God through the emotions and desires that have the attractive, beautiful character of the primal love impulse, rather than the selfish and separative motivation of hatred. Paul Foster Case, spiritual alchemist extraordinaire and founder of the Builders of the Adytum, said the following: "If both emotions, love and hate, are spiritual, they must alike be immortal. When cosmic manifestation occurs, the process of involution takes place. This process is the separation of the one thing into many parts. The force of hatred is involutionary and properly belongs to that phase of manifestation. But we as human beings are upon the path of return, or in the process of evolution. In other words, we are headed back toward unity. Consequently, the force we must employ is the synthesizing, attractive forces of love, and our desires and emotions must be colored by that force. It is always a uniting force of great power. We utilize the separative faculty of discrimination to enable us to understand the elusive nature of separateness, and to enable us to determine the true color of our emotional life. And Key 6, the Lovers, tells us that it should be colored by emotions akin to love." The title, The Lovers, brings out the fact that pairs of opposites are not antagonists, but complements. The lovers are not simply the man and woman in the key, but represent all opposites. Thus, the main lesson to be drawn from the title is that right understanding of the universe shows it to be, in all of its details, an expression of the power of love, as the right and balanced relationship existing between the seeming many parts of which the universe is apparently made up. Love is the uniting factor. The astrological attribution of Key 6 is to the zodiacal sign Gemini, the twins. Here again, you see the same symbolism of discrimination and separateness. This symbol also brings out the fact that opposites are really different aspects of one thing, just as heat and cold are different aspects of something we call temperature, past and future of that which we call time, and so on. The man is self-consciousness and corresponds to the magician. He looks towards the woman, for he cannot see the angel himself. Only in her eyes can he catch a glimpse of the higher being. This is a profound truth, for we do not come into contact with superconsciousness with the self-conscious mind. Instead, we perceive it as reflected in the mirror of subconsciousness. Both characters are nude to indicate that neither has anything to hide from the other, and that perfect reciprocal activity is possible only when the nature of each is entirely revealed to the other. Intelligent discrimination is possible only when all facts are revealed. So, to sum it all up, we use our discrimination to determine toxic discourse from healthy discourse. And if we are having trouble determining the difference, we ask ourselves, what is being reciprocated here? Is it love that I'm feeling, or anxiety and hate? If it is naked, unqualified, unconditional love, then everything is great. If it is not, then we have work to do. Gemini is assigned to the Lover's card, and Gemini is an archetype of detailed communication and socialization. You can use the Gemini archetype in the details of your relationships, both with yourself and with others, to help cut away the lies, the toxicity from the truth, and the love, so that only truth and love remain. I'll leave you with this thought. We don't need to be fixed. We need to be understood. It's through understanding that everything naturally fixes itself. listening to KLLGLP 97.9, Willits, California, Willits Hometown Radio. Thanks for tuning in, and listen next week, Saturdays at 11 o'clock, and a repeated show on Monday at 10 a.m. Those are the show times for the Gnostic Connection, and please have a fabulous rest of your week.